Hi, I'm Ronald Bownes. I'm founder of dreamXchange, a platform that helps unemployed people find work, look for work, and really building a people's economy through self-employment, self-economic empowerment. I think we're sitting, as of yesterday, but even many decades before this, on a seriously big problem, a big catastrophe in this country. It was announced that unemployment has now reached 35%, which is a complete and utter disaster. And I just want to quote you on something that I put out into social media, and then we'll unpack a bit of it, because it's such a big problem we're facing at the moment, and we should all be deeply concerned about what the real problem is. I put out yesterday and I said, let's stop the bullshit about variants, about vaccinations, about lockdowns, about masking, and about social distancing for a pandemic which to date has affected about 4% of our population, but at the same time destroyed millions of livelihoods. The government, the media, many large corporations have thrown their collective might behind this false problem for their own control agenda. So yesterday they announced a record unemployment of 35%, which equates to around 12 million unemployed people, which in essence affects about 20 million lives. That was announced yesterday. And so therefore approximately 30% of the country's population is living in poverty. So I just want you to think about it again, 30% of the population living in poverty. The real problem facing us and the world is economic disempowerment, solving poverty, waking people up, making sure that those who are controlling it and living in luxury are brought to account, because most of the people in this country and around the world are living in abject poverty. So let's unpack some of these figures for a moment. The pandemic, which I call it, I said before, is all about vaccinations, it's about viruses, it's about variants, and we're throwing billions of rands into that space. Okay, and yet it has only affected 4% of the population, a survival rate close to 99.9+%. Yet billions of rands, we've had lockdowns. But what is the real issue here? The real issue has to be our children are starving. They are starving because we haven't got economic opportunities for them. And when we lock people down, our economic opportunities are less, and then our children starve. And in this day and age, 2021 on this planet, with a planet that's economically empowered, that a planet's got prosperity, the planet's got everything for all, we are sitting here with a really serious problem because our children are starving, and it's just not good enough. And all we're doing at this stage is focusing on pathetic pandemics, pathetic vaccinations, pathetic viruses, and mandating. When we mandate, more people lose their jobs. Now we're going to do mandating, and it's going to create a diversion, and it's going to create an apartheid. Those who don't have vaccinations are actually going to be excluded from the population, and therefore more people are going to starve. So let's look at the real issue. The real issue here is that we have 35% unemployment rate in this country. We have 60% youth unemployment in this country. It's just not good enough. We have to get off our bums and do something about it. We have 60% food insecurity. Our children are starving. So governments and organizations can play vaccinations, they can play pandemics, but our children are starving. And we have to do something about this. And then you take it further, we have the highest inequality rate in the world. And so more children are starving because of that. It is incomprehensible. It's a moral incomprehensibility for us to have children and students and people looking for work and children starving. So when we look at this scenario of the real problem, with about 40% fully unemployed, including all the people who are not looking for work, we are saying to ourselves, okay, in any street in this country, 2 out of 5 households do not have income. And 3 out of 5 households are actually starving and do not have food. It is utterly unacceptable. We have to stand up. We have to make a stand. And we have to start doing something about it. And we have to cut the bullshit about control, about authority, about mandates, and about vaccinations. We have to actually face the real problem, which is food insecurity, which is kids starving, children starving. Many, many years ago, my father shared a story, was in the war. And he had a little plate of food fighting in the desert in North Africa. And when he looked through the darkness, there were about 20 kids sitting around him. And he said to himself, I have to share that little plate of food with all these kids. They were starving. And he made a pact to himself. He was never going to allow starving kids on his watch again. And we should never allow that again. We should actually look at this and say the real problem, the real catastrophe is economic disempowerment in this country. And the real consequence of that is children are starving, and we should not have children starving on this planet ever. So if I had anything, I'd throw the government into the sea, I'd throw the vaccination into the sea, I'd throw all that into the sea and say, let's feed the children. And how are we going to start doing that? We're going to start doing that by economically empowering people. And I've walked the streets over the last 10 years to all sorts of places around here. Many of the areas have had approximately 2 generations of adults who have never actually had work. And the result of 2 generations of adults who haven't had work, the result of that is children are starving. Children should not starve. Never starve. And that's the focus where the billions of rand should be going. Economically empowering people and economically empowering now students and youth. They are the ones who are now trying to look for work. 60% unemployment for the youth in this country. We have probably the highest in the world. And yet their parents aren't economically empowered and can't feed their children. If children go out to look for work, if they can't find work, South Africa is starving. Kids are starving. It's unacceptable. So how are we going to change this? We all have to hold hands together and say, move out of the fear, because the pandemic's all about fear. Move into love. Now we're going to start talking to each other and say, how are we going to do this? Self-economic empowerment. We've got to create opportunities for each other. We've got to feed our children. We cannot get to a point we've got 50, 60% food insecurity in this country. And so let's look at it very, very closely. Everybody can do their bit. Everybody can walk together and create economic empowerment opportunities for each other. Look at our dreamXchange portal, people helping people. Let's create a people's economy where there's freedom of expression, etc., etc. So a lovely young lady came into this office and looked on this wall and saw all these wonderful pictures, and she went home to her mom and said to her mom, are they creating the future in there? And her mom said, yes, they are. So our whole team is trying to create a future that's free, that's economically empowered, that's got opportunities for everybody else, and that's deregulated. And this is why we're on this planet. Every single human being on this earth is from the divine infinite wall, and every single human being from the divine infinite wall should be free, should have opportunities, should be able to economically empower themselves. So I probably want to end with a fantastic saying or a little piece of poetry from Patanjali. And Patanjali says this: when you are inspired by some great project, some awesome vision, your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. Your thoughts break their bonds, and you find yourself in a new, great, wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive. And you discover yourself as a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. So my question to you is, what great, new, wonderful world are we dreaming into being? What do we need to give our children? Take this mask off and throw it away. Okay? Throw it away. We need to smile at people. We need to hug them. We need to hold them. We need to say to our younger generation, not only are you starving from food, but you're also starving from love, you're starving from opportunity, from inspiration. We need to get everybody back onto why we're here. It's a beautiful earth, it's a beautiful environment, and we need to make this work again. So this future that we need to create for our children so that they don't have a terribly bad future for their kids. It's an environment that's free, an environment that's opportunity filled, that's inspiring, where people are looking at each other into the eyes with their mask off, they're hugging each other, Because what the children need now is the food of love, the food of hugs, the food of recognition, the food of inspiration, and then also foods in their belly. And as my father said, on his watch, he did not want to see children starving on this planet. And in my watch, as long as I live, we're going to reduce poverty, we're going to reduce unemployment, and we're not going to have children starving again. Thank you very much.